Hi there. Well, first day of Parliament, so kicks off with the Prime Minister's statement to the House, and that's a very wide-ranging speech. We actually publish a speech which you can read on the website, and that covers really the forward-looking agenda for the next 12 months of the government. Obviously, you would expect from us that there's quite a bit of attention to the economy, and that's because in the end, when we have a strong economy, we can pay for the things that we want. We can deliver the opportunities for New Zealanders to not only have good jobs, but be able to look after their own family, have a great way of fulfilling their aspirations and their goals. So this year we've been outlining that we're going to be very careful in terms of new budget spending. We're going to spend less than we did last year, about $800 million extra a year, get our deficit under control, get back into surplus a year earlier, and that is critically important, as I think we discussed on the video blog around the mixed ownership model for assets, because without that New Zealand will have a credit rating downgrade. That means you pay more for your interest rates, and ultimately, by the way, we've got to pay all that money back, and we can see how quickly that builds up. If we don't do too much from here, in 4 years' time, the interest alone on our stock of national debt would mean that it would cost more to pay the interest than we currently pay for early childhood education, military and the police. So there's quite a bit in the speech about the economy. Also talking about the component parts that drive the economy, lifting, for instance, infrastructure spending, talking a bit more about science, going to quite a number of areas where we think economic performance can be enhanced. We're also talking actually in the speech about why we need that strong economy, and that is to deliver better outcomes and better value for money. One of the areas where we're focusing is ultimately on the state sector and the size of the bureaucracy. And it's not that we don't value the bureaucracy, we do actually. There's some tremendous people working there, but relatively speaking, we're not a lean, efficient bureaucracy. There's too many people allocated in that area, and I don't think we're efficient enough for a modern day New Zealand in the way that we interact with the general public. So we will be working over the next year or two to find sensible ways of reducing the size of that bureaucracy, making it more efficient, more user-friendly, and of course picking up those resources and putting them into frontline services, as we've been doing with health and police over the course of the last couple of years. We've also got a focus of attention on vulnerable children. There'll be a number of legislative changes which will help protect vulnerable children, which is an area we have great concern about, and you'll see quite a number of suggestions coming from us, and also obviously a ministerial inquiry this year into child abuse. So that's an area that we'll be looking a lot at. We'll also have highlighted that welfare reform is on the cards. We've got a welfare working group that will be reporting back to us soon. And the issue there is really that we've got about 350,000 New Zealanders of working age on a benefit, big increase in sickness and invalids beneficiaries over the life of the previous Labour government, about 200,000 kids living in benefit-based homes. And of course, as I've often said, you judge a society by the way they look after the sick and vulnerable, but you also judge a society on how many sick and vulnerable people that it creates and how many dependent people you create. And if we ultimately want to lift children out of welfare, if we want to lift their aspirations, then we believe the pathway to work is the best way of doing that. And so in the end, the simple message is if you can work, you should work, and then the welfare system can really be targeted at those that are in absolute need, and we can help with great efficiency. So that's kind of the theme of the speech. Have a look at it online, or probably the video of my speech in Parliament will be there as well, which largely summarises those events. Be a busy year for the government. You will have seen last week that we announced the election date, November the 26th. Also made it clear who we'll work with and who we won't, and particularly we won't work with Winston Peters. And the reason for that is it's nothing personal actually, it's just that I don't think we can put together a government that would fulfil our aspirations. He wants to spend more money, ultimately we want to reduce expenditure. He doesn't want a bar of having Kiwis being able to own a little bit of our state-owned assets. We think it's a good way of expanding our savings and investment protocol, and it goes on and on and on. So realistically I think we're better to be upfront with the public. If you vote for Winston Peters and he holds the balance of power, then you will have a Labour-led government. And I think that's a government New Zealanders need to think a lot about. It would be with the Green Party, so it would be a government that would have a very high top rate of personal taxation, as has already been signalled by Labour. It would have a capital gains tax, as already signalled by the Greens. It would have a very wide-ranging, comprehensive emissions trading scheme, expensive for consumers, and of course more spending by Winston Peters. If you contrast that with what we have on offer, it'll be an efficient, well-run, sound economically based government that looks to reward people for their own personal hard work and enterprise, looks to demand greater value for money from our services and where we spend money, and one I think that is just a lot more aspirational for where New Zealand can go into the future. So check out Speech, and look forward to talking to you during the course of the year.